Maybe you're starting a new adventure and you don't want to play the most powerful character in the world, or you want to do a little something for flavor this time. Well, I would like to talk about playing maybe what it would be considered a suboptimal build for role playing ideas and see where we can go with that. There are certain things that you can do that won't affect the gameplay too much, but there are some backgrounds, archetypes, or feats that you can take that can bring a little bit of flavor to your character. And that's what I'd like to talk about today. My name is Don. I'm trying to be the Sly Strategist, and let's go ahead and get into it. So, we're going to be talking about basically the opposite of min maxing or the most effective builds. There are YouTubers out there that are great for that, much better than I could possibly be at it. So, we'll leave that to them. I'm talking about suboptimal builds in order to role play your characters a little bit better, to bring a little life into the adventure, if that is what you would like to do. And it doesn't mean that suboptimal builds are bad necessarily. In fact, in Pathfinder, it's pretty hard to build an absolutely horrendous character. There are a few things you could do if you actually wanted to build, and as opposed to suboptimal, I'm going to call them flawed. There are some optional rules that you can do on character creation, voluntary flaws, like, well, there is an optional rule called voluntary flaw, and you can give that character a major flaw regardless of your ancestry. You would take 2 additional ability flaws when applying the ability boosts and the ability flaws from your ancestry, and it's purely for role playing a highly flawed character. And even in this particular steps, it states that you should consult your group if you plan to do this, because you are going to be adding difficulty to them, as well as potentially causing more work to the GM if they have to modify the adventure that you guys are doing, because technically they're going to be playing a lower level group than what your actual levels might indicate. And then another way to potentially do a truly flawed character is you can do the roll and assign scores in order to do your character traits. It is an option that you have that doesn't guarantee you're going to get a bad character or a flawed character, but is much more likely to happen if you do something like that. But with that being said, if you're looking for a challenge and you just want to try something different, I do encourage you to give a suboptimal build a try. So the first thing I would say, and it's what I said even for the trying to build a flawed character, is that you should let your party and your GM know what you're trying to do. Make sure that your party is in agreement that that's something they want to do, because although it will be fun for you to play a flawed character, they are the ones that are also going to have to deal with it. So make sure that they're on board with you doing that, and make sure that your GM is on board with doing it as well. Let's say, for example, you wanted to give your character and I'm not saying that these are suboptimal at all or anything like that. However, by rules of the game, it would make it a little bit harder. Let's do that stipulation right here. But let's say you wanted to give your character a mobility issue or disability. That's fantastic. However, make sure that you've worked with a GM to find a way for you to overcome it so that you can still maintain pace with the party. Maybe you have a wheelchair or a magic wheelchair that allows you to move the normal amount of move speeds. There are things that can be done in order to allow you to play the flavor without hampering everybody else in the group. If you want to play a shy barbarian that just doesn't like to go into a rage, that's fantastic too. But make sure that the GM is aware of it and make sure your party agrees to it. The second thing to consider when you're doing a suboptimal build is recognize what weaknesses you're introducing, and then try and come up with things that you can do in order to overcome these weaknesses. It'll help you plan ahead, and it will help you create a build that gives you the flavor that you want without impeding the party too much or kind of causing a headache for the GM. You could select an archetype, or if your table is using it, the free archetype. That would be not the most optimal archetype for your build. For example, let's say you have a cleric, and as opposed to taking the medic free archetype, which gives you that expert in medicine as well as doctor's visitation, fairly soon in the archetype itself, take the Familiar Master. If your character loves fuzzy, cute things, you could make a little squirrel, you could make a cat, you could make anything you wanted as a familiar, but they're still useful. And don't forget that. You do have the Familiar Conduit familiar ability, as well as you could give it a manual dexterity familiar ability and the spell delivery master ability. So, although familiar master might not be the most optimal build for a cleric, it is still useful and doesn't actually impose any disadvantages on the party and can actually allow you to do some things better, and you can work on your build around that. And I guess the last thing I'd like to say about suboptimal builds is try to have fun with it. I say that for a lot of my role playing things. You want to have fun with it, but you also want your party to have fun with it. And I've said this in another one of the role playing videos, and I'll say it again here. I don't consider the GM as God thing a good way to think of the GM relationship. The GM is a player as well. They're devoting their time in order to have fun with the group as well. So you want your party to be able to have fun, and you want your GM to be able to have fun while giving you a chance to stretch your wings a little bit. These suboptimal builds can force you to, if I use this phrase, think out of the box a little bit and come up with creative solutions or creative applications of what suboptimal thing you picked on to make it not really a disability at all. So once again, don't be afraid to experiment and really have fun with it. Now, I hope this role-playing idea guide kind of helped you out a little bit, maybe made you think of some new things. There are things to keep in mind when you're playing a suboptimal build that, although might not be the min-maxed best one ever, is not going to hurt the party and is not going to make your GM do a lot of extra work. So if you like the video, please feel free to like, subscribe, or hit that notification bell. And whatever you do, I hope you have a great day and happy adventuring. Thanks.